Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be looking at... Wait, what is this again? Season 8, Game of Thrones. No. This is not... No. This is season You Are My Queen. I'm going to call it that because I think I, as well as a lot of other people, are still waiting for season 8, because this is not the season 8 that we were waiting for. I may be a bit of a hypocrite for saying that because I wasn't a fan of the show initially, but you know, I like it too. I think it's brilliant. And besides, I've yet to read the books anyway. Anyway, back to the review. So, season 8 is pretty much meant to be the culmination of everything that was set up throughout seasons 1 to 7. And so, being the final season of one of the most talked about TV shows in recent memory, did it deliver? Well...
What the fuck is that? What the fuck happened?
Hey!
What the hell is even that? How do you fuck that up? How do you fuck that up?
I don't even know what to say. If there's one thing I can mention, it's that I'm so glad I didn't invest my time in it throughout the past decade. Oh my goodness. The other thing is, people, they nagged me for a couple of years, from like season 5 onwards, that, oh, Game of Thrones is the best thing ever, you gotta check it out, And it's funny, every time I mention it nowadays, people just keep quiet. Now it's like everyone has to be ashamed of being a fan in the first place. They have to live with it for the rest of their life. Oh, they're probably thinking, thanks D&D for wasting our time. From 2011 to 2019, so we're looking at 8 years to be exact. 8 years they'll never get back. None of us will anyway. The thing is, I no longer had to be ashamed of the fact that I wasn't on board like many other people. And, you know, 2019 was the worst year of my life, and I'm so glad that year's over and done with. And for most people, that was like the last year of normality before COVID changed everything. And the only bad thing to come out of 2019 for everyone else is the fact that Game of Thrones ended so poorly. I mean, grow up, guys. It's just television. It's not the end of the world. Sorry, guys. I can't stop laughing. And I'm trying to laugh as quietly as I can because my family are watching a movie. Meanwhile, I'm recording this in my room, having a blast. Just making this review up as I go along. Okay, for all this time, let's just get back to the review, right? Now, I can understand if D&D weren't going to be able to please everybody with this final season. Let's say it ended up being a very polarizing season that challenged its viewers to the point where half the fans like the conclusion to the story and the other half despise it, or they just despise certain aspects of it. In that case, I can understand because they ran out of source material from season 6 onwards. Expectations were sky high like never before when it came to television. And you know, if they at least tried to come up with something effective, then maybe things would have panned out better. Again, you can't please everybody. But this didn't please anybody! Oh my goodness. And you could argue that they at least tried, but I don't think they tried hard enough. Okay, I need to stop laughing. Sorry. So is this a bad season at all? It depends on how you look at it. I don't think so. It's not bad, it just has so many bad things going for it. On the whole, it's an okay season of television, but as a final season to a show, let alone Game of Thrones, it just feels atrocious. It feels terrible. It's not. There's just a lot of terrible stuff in it, that's all. And that's because this show, I get that it's all about subverting expectations, but I think with this season, D&D took it the wrong way. Now they're just doing the opposite of what's expected and trying to pass it off as bold and brilliant writing. And because of that, this season actually has a lot in common with Star Wars The Last Jedi. A movie that was so disappointing, I tried to hide my disappointment for months. It is without a doubt the worst installment in the history of Star Wars. The director behind that movie, Rian Johnson, was so obsessed with subverting expectations and making a movie for himself rather than the fans, that it damaged the reputation of the franchise the same way Season 8 has damaged Game of Thrones' reputation forever. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, right? I'm gonna do a quick spoiler-free review of the season for anyone who hasn't seen Season 8, aka Season You're My Queen. And then there's going to be a spoiler section where I'm going to discuss spoilers. So strap yourselves in, guys. This is gonna be fun to talk about. So the only good things to come out of this season is the production values, the visual effects, the cinematography, the music, the action scenes, they're amazing. The actors, they did the best they could with the material given to them, even though it was shit. There were some aspects of the story I liked. You know, the first 2 episodes were really good. They were an effective build-up to the Battle of Winterfell when, you know, the Night King and the White Walkers and the Army of the Dead show up. As well as, you know, the send-offs for some of the characters. I don't want to talk about that now, we'll talk about that in spoilers. So, those are the only things I liked about Season 8. Sorry, I mean Season You Are My Queen. Now, the biggest problem with Season You Are My Queen is the fact that, again, much like Season 7 before it, everything feels rushed and everything feels crammed. And in this case it's even worse, because you have, again, what feels like 2 seasons worth of material crammed into less than 10 episodes, but in this case it's 6. Not 7 like Season 7, but 6 episodes. Granted, the episodes are a little bit longer this time, but that doesn't help its case at all. I mean, how can they fit everything into 6 episodes? You can't, it's not possible. The Battle of Winterfell could have been an entire season, considering the entire show was literally building up to that, and everything afterwards could have been a season of its own. Combine that with the fact that Season 7 could have been 2 seasons, the show could have been 10 seasons and it would have been perfect. I already discussed in my Season 7 review why D&D chose to rush the last 2 seasons, so you can go check out that video if you want some more clarity. But to give you some further context, George R.R. Martin said in an interview that D&D had been saying for some time that 7 seasons is all they would do. Meanwhile, HBO wanted about 10 seasons. You know, they had more than enough money for that, obviously. And George even wanted about 13 seasons because of the amount of material that his books contained, including the upcoming last 2, The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. It's really a shame because this show was the epitome of a slow burn, much like Breaking Bad and Ozark. It was a slow burn done right. And then those last 2 seasons they just didn't care, you know? It's like, let's get to the end quickly so we can jump on the Star Wars money train. Not that it really matters because they cancelled their deal with Star Wars in favor of signing a deal with Netflix. The next thing is the fact that they did a huge disservice to many of the characters on this show, and I really do mean many. Without getting into spoilers just yet, they either act out of character, they're killed off unceremoniously, or they're underutilized. There are also a couple of plot developments that literally make no sense whatsoever. For example, the Dothraki's battle plan in the Battle of Winterfell is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And at another point, Daenerys just kind of forgets about something that she knew. Very nice, David Benioff. Very nice, wonderful. And if I recall, there's a number of storylines that were set up way earlier in the show, all throughout, that just didn't go anywhere, and so I assumed maybe at least some of them would be paid off in the season, because there's about 20 or more of them to be exact, and it's okay if, D&D couldn't pay all of them off. If there were spin-offs in the works that take place after Game of Thrones, some of these ideas could have been explored, but HBO has prequels in development, so it doesn't look like that's gonna happen. And D&D didn't even try to address even half or a quarter of these storylines. They're just left dangling by the end. So why were they set up in the first place? I don't care if they were in the books or not. You set those things up, you need to act on them. And you didn't. Shame. And a few nitpicks with the technical aspects is the very last thing. The Battle of Winterfell was so dark you couldn't see jack for a huge chunk of the episode. And then of course there's the true star of season You Are My Queen, and that's the Starbucks Cup. And fun fact, D&D have only had one interview post season 8, and that was the only thing that they hopped on. As far as their controversial story choices, not so much. And in the finale, someone clearly left a water bottle on set. And that's another thing, not even the finale could save this train wreck of a final season. People were so numbed by the events of this season. By that point, it was like, who cares, I mean, it was the highest rated episode of the season, but that's only out of curiosity. Alright, that's it. Now we're gonna get into spoilers, so if you wanna avoid them, just click on this time right here. Okay, full spoilers from this point onwards. So the first 2 episodes were great. Then you get to episode 3, which is pretty much the Battle of Winterfell. So, first things first, the battle is literally just 1 episode. The entire show had been building up to this moment for years. And you're telling me all we need is just 1 episode to see this battle unfold. Theon was tortured for an entire season. But no, the Night King doesn't get the same treatment apparently. I mean, once this is over, what's left? And the stuff that unfolds afterwards only undermines the importance of the White Walker storyline. Because when you think about it, the White Walker storyline was an allegory for climate change. And when it comes to climate change, countries around the world need to put aside their differences to face a common enemy. And that's pretty much what was going on here in Game of Thrones. All these kingdoms that are constantly fighting for power just to get closer and closer to the Iron Throne should have been directing their energy and their attention towards the Night King and the White Walkers, because that is a much greater enemy than anything they've ever faced. So let's look at the episode itself. The music was great and the actors were fantastic and the action was epic and some of the visuals are pretty cool. But it was so dark you just could not see, again, jack. And the cinematographer, constantly defended this decision, saying it was for artistic reasons. Now, realistically, the battle would look like this during that time period. And I don't think it was a flat-out terrible creative decision, mainly because I watched this episode on my phone in the dark at night underneath my blanket and duvet while I was preparing to sleep because it was winter that time and it was freezing. But sometimes I wished that this battle had actually started out during the day and then ended at night. Plus, this battle felt largely inconsequential because many of the major characters actually survived. Jon, Daenerys, Bran, and so on. Even Arya was there, and she survived. In fact, the only people who died during the battle were Jorah and Theon. And Theon had a good send-off, I'm not gonna lie. It felt like he had fully redeemed himself at this point. But yeah, all the other characters somehow have miraculous plot armor. The Dothraki's battle plan that I mentioned earlier, they just march into battle without all that much of a strategy, and they all die. Morons. Oh, and the dragon that the Night King rode on while on his way to the wall, he's pretty much useless. He breathes fire everywhere, but he doesn't really kill anyone. Oh, and Arya ends up being the one to kill the Night King for some reason. And as a result of all of this, the Night King pretty much amounts to D&D's version of Supreme Leader Snoke from the Star Wars sequel trilogy. And it's a shame because the Night King is actually not in the Song of Ice and Fire books, The White Walkers are, but not the Night King. The Night King was created specifically for the show. The 4th episode, the only real problem I had was, again, Daenerys forgetting about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, even though they almost certainly haven't forgotten about her. Thanks for that, David. And Jon's pup from way back in season 1, Ghost, is now all grown up, and Jon just kind of ignores him when he gets a chance to pet him and embrace him and so on. Thankfully, the last episode made up for that. Then you get to episode 5. And this is a huge contender for the worst episode of not only the season but the entire show. I mean, it's up there with episode 3. This is basically the climax of the season because the finale is pretty much the epilogue. So the thing that really killed this episode is what happens to Daenerys, or really what she ends up doing to be more specific. And what does she do? Well, she flies all the way to King's Landing and demands that Cersei surrenders. And even though Cersei agrees to this,
I can't do this next joke.
Daenerys just pulls a 180 and goes full-on Mad Queen. She just commits mass freaking genocide and kills all of the civilians in King's Landing. Where do I begin? Oh my goodness. Okay, so the idea in of itself is actually pretty good, and given that her father was no different, it makes sense, but it wasn't set up throughout the show to be that way. You're telling me that the mother of dragons, the breaker of chains, the freer of slaves, if that's a thing, I mean it makes sense, she did free a bunch of slaves, embraces her family name and just murders everybody, innocent civilians mostly. How is this earned? How is it foreshadowed? How? This whole transition happens within like a few episodes. This isn't something that took place over the course of the show. If it did, it would have made sense, but that's not what happened. Yes, she was responsible for a few violent acts throughout the show, but these were all for good causes. And yes, Jorah died and Melisandre died, and that only motivated her even more to conquer King's Landing, along with the fact that the Lannisters were responsible for her father's death and for her family's exile and all that. But this just came out of nowhere. Like, this is more sudden and forced than Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side in Star Wars. It's that bad. Arya was there too, and she got out of there scot-free because her plot armor was super thick by that point. Cersei did nothing but just stand around for the whole episode. And in all the ways she could have died, she died in a cave that collapsed. How many times have we seen that by now? And don't get me started on Jaime. Jaime's redemption arc throughout the show was going so well, and he even hooked up with Brienne in that episode, only to leave her and go all the way back to his one true love, his own sister Cersei, so that they could die together. I get what they were trying to do, but nah, it's like they took all of his character development and just threw it out the window. Well done, guys. The death of Varys was one of the most forced and contrived things I've seen in this entire show. It was a huge disservice to the character. And it really felt like a cheap excuse to have Tyrion act out of character. And that's another thing, Tyrion was a character who got by on his wits. But as you get closer and closer to the end, he seems to be surviving on his luck more than anything. And don't get me wrong, I liked the idea of conflict between these two characters, but the resolution to it, again, just felt so forced and so contrived. And before we even discuss the finale itself, Jon Snow is a pain in the ass. He has a purpose this season, and it was basically to kill Daenerys before she became too evil, I guess. But for the majority of the season, he did nothing really. I mean, he took part in the Battle of Winterfell and he survived. But he was so one note in the season. I mean, because he and Dany are together now, he just goes around telling her, "You are my queen."
Not about my queen. She is my queen. You are my queen. You are my queen. I don't know what else I can say. And you will always be my queen.
And then he ends up telling her so one more time before stabbing her to death in the finale. I'm not gonna lie though, I like the fact that Drogon burnt down the Iron Throne because that throne was a symbol of corruption, lies, deception, and so on. So it actually made sense for it to be destroyed. That's a cool way to subvert expectations. The finale has a couple of pacing issues. You know, there are long stretches where nothing really happens, coupled together with some awkward time jumps to make up for that. Yeah, that was weird. And out of all the people who could have been crowned king and ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, they picked Bran.
Why do you think I came all this way?
Bran? Really? I thought she was supposed to be the three-eyed raven and that was it. Was it not? Look, again, this is another idea that sounded good on paper, but Bran did nothing for the entire show. His storyline was the whole three-eyed raven thing. Oh, I cannot wait to see what George does in the books. And I don't know about you guys, but George can take his sweet ass time because I've still yet to read the other 5 books first. Though I will say, Jon leading the people of Winterfell beyond the wall was great. Sansa becomes Queen of the North and Arya sets out to explore more of Westeros and beyond. All of that is great. But Bran becoming the king of what is now 6 kingdoms? I'm sorry, it didn't feel earned. So before we wrap this up, I just want to get a few other things out of the way. You know, it's such a shame that Season 8 turned out the way that it did because it will forever go down in history now as arguably the most disappointing final season in television history. And not even a revival or a limited series of sorts can save it or redeem its legacy. I mean, the ending is completely unfixable. It's done, it's ruined, that's it. Say what you will about Dexter New Blood and its attempt to redeem the legacy of Dexter, but at least, you know, the writers had an opportunity there. Whether or not it succeeded is debatable. So yeah, the ending to Game of Thrones is absolutely unfixable, and it even resulted in a petition on change.org which demanded for the final season to be completely redone from scratch. The petition may have drawn criticism from HBO and some of the cast members, but there were a couple of celebrities who kind of agreed with this petition, like Kevin Hart, for example. He responded to the petition by saying, "Put my face on it," because he was disappointed as well. And even though the cast members have defended the final season to the best of their ability, you can tell that they're disappointed in some of their interviews. But since then, some of them have gone on to express some degree of dismay with where their characters ended up. So, yeah. What a disappointment. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything regarding season You're My Queen, or season 8, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, we're done with Game of Thrones for now. Before I do a ranking video, next week I'm going to be discussing season 4 of Ozark. It's the final season, it's out on Netflix. I'm currently binging it at the moment and it's pretty cool so far. I'll have a review out for that next week as well as a ranking video. And then I'll get back into the Game of Thrones ranking video. So yeah, thank you all for watching guys. Please be sure to like the video, share it and subscribe. Hit the notification icon. Be safe during this time and I'll see you soon.
You will rule wisely and well while she
She is my queen.